everybody. Welcome to this week's podcast, Optimal Fats and the roles that these fats can play in our life. I know, Amy, you've got a lot of research here that you've been doing on this topic, and so I know we were excited to dive into it. But we always start with our 4 pillars this week.
Okay.
So,
Breathe.
breathe. Boy, we have kicked off our yoga teacher training. And so that's been, we do on Mondays, it's 4 hours with the 200-hour. And then on Thursdays, we do 4 hours with our 500-hour yoga teacher training participants, students. And so that's just been a ton of fun. I mean, we were out at the sailing club and this last week and got some sailing in and some fun stuff there. So
Nice to immerse yourself in the yoga and the breathing and the books that we share with them that are wonderful.
It's a full immersion in the breathe pillar, right? That is what you've said all along is, this is, if we can help people to be that mini scientists for how stress is impacting their life, for some reason, yoga does a great job of helping us to understand this physical instrument and how we can tune into the essence of who we are as well.
Eat. How are you feeling going dairy-free?
Yeah, so this last, couple weeks ago, I was bloated, maybe gassy, and you're like, maybe it's the cheese, and I'm always no, it's not the cheese.
Clearing your throat.
And I cut out cheese, and all that goes away. I mean,
dairy.
My gosh, I am not happy at all. But the substitute for me is goat cheese, and the sheep cheese actually is super creamy and tasty. Didn't seem to have such an issue with it because it goes so well with wine that we like to drink occasionally. So that's been. What about your eat pillar? You don't have any issues with anything on the eat stuff?
I've been doing a lot of veggies and really focusing in on the rainbow. And last night, I think we had one of every color for dinner. So I'm just enjoying trying to explore different things. We had green tomatoes, right? We fried, but I sauteed them in some healthy,
which were really tasty,
coconut oil and put some like almond flour on them. They were wonderful. Right. So yeah, I'm having fun.
It was a good little concoction. What did we do? The oil, Italian.
It's like a little.
What was it?
The dip or
Italian seasoning.
What we cooked it in.
We did. No, you dipped it and then we put it in the flour.
Then we put it in almond flour. Yes.
That was just nice almond flour and salt, I think. Anyway.
Yeah, it's really good.
Move pillar. We got back on the bike.
We did.
The tandem, and we're
when you get off track, it's
hard
to get back in the rhythm. But we are getting better about.
We are forcing ourselves into our 14 minutes target heart rate every day. We've done well lately, and I'm sleeping great.
Mine comes and goes. Last night I did yoga nidra in the middle of the night because my mind wanted to wake up at 2 a.m. But that happens, and so, but it worked great.
You have the techniques to get you back to sleep.
To it, and so.
That's awesome. All right, so the role of fat in our body.
Yeah, this is the last of our macronutrients, and honestly, I think this one is probably one of the most confusing and maybe even controversial.
Right, we talked about remove all the fats forever, right?
Yes. I was raised on low-fat diet. Fat makes you fat is what everybody thought.
It makes sense, but it doesn't work that way.
Right. Yeah, fat has so many roles in our body. So I think today's podcast, if anything, if we can just help people understand the roles that it plays, and then how to pick good fats in our diet and what ones to steer clear of.
Awesome.
That's our goal.
There you go.
So the role, lots of uses. It stores energy. We talked about protein and carbs give us 4 calories per gram. Well, fat gives us more than twice that. It's 9 calories per gram. So we get more energy out of it when we take it in our body. Insulates us, protects our vital organs, and keeps us from freezing. Important building block for making hormones. Increases the absorption of vitamins and minerals, nourishes skin, hair, nails, Another thing, it promotes nerve functioning. It really, like, the fat is that lining around the nerves, like the nerve sheath is made up of fat. And every one of our cells, the cell membrane is basically phospholipids, which are fats. So that's so important for like cellular structure and function.
I've always been fascinated. I mean, you've said this forever, but 60% of the brain is fat.
Yeah.
I mean, so why would you have a fat-free diet if you actually need the fat to make a healthy brain?
I know it. It is interesting. And I think that's the thing, is like understanding, as much as we can deep dive into this, to how you can pick then the good fats to help your brain, to help you build hormones. Because really cholesterol is important. It's the backbone for progesterone, testosterone, and a lot of things that we don't even think of. And everybody thinks, oh, cholesterol is bad. And the wrong types of cholesterol can be bad, but even good fats help lower inflammation in our body. It's the building block to help our immune cells and those cytokines and things that people talk about, like to modulate those in the right levels, helps with proper blood clotting. So it's really, I mean,
well, even that
there's
podcast
so
that we
many.
were listening to on Dr. Hyman's was talking about, you know, you're just a more stable person. And he was talking about, I think, the homicide rates and just violence in general goes down as people eat a healthier diet
And get
with
the right type
right
of
fats.
fats.
Well, that should make sense. If 60% of your brain is fat, then if you're giving it the right fats, then it's making the right brain.
You're right. And even some of those chemicals like
powerful.
dopamine and things that help us with impulse control, decision making, addictions, focus, attention. I mean, people they talk about using omega-3s or good fats for attention deficit even. So, I mean, it's amazing. And so I think if we can maybe dive down into understand like what are bad fats, what are good fats. I used to say the good, the bad, and the ugly, but as we have started learning more, and this book does a really good job of breaking it down a little more into helping you understand the fats as well.
Very scientific.
And then Dr. Hyman actually has another good book. It's called Eat Fat, Get Thin. And then he has a great cookbook about it. But the reason I really am changing it to more like good and bad fats, the bad are the ugly ones that I used to call the ugly. That's the trans fats, or I guess you would call them hydrogenated, partially hydrogenated. And most of those are man-made. There's a little bit in animal products, a little bit of trans fats in those.
And let's just be honest, those were made probably not to harm us, but they create a shelf life that is amazing
Make
for
them
a
shelf
product.
stable.
So, the last thing you want to do is if you're selling someone, a grocery store, your product, you don't want them 2 weeks later going, hey, your product went bad, right? You want to be able to take that Twinkie and set it on the shelf and let it sit there for 7 years.
And they're really cheap to make too. So it's cheap and it's shelf stable, so it lasts a long time.
So we're not going to fault them. I mean, this is where we get to vote as consumers and realize that if I don't buy that, then that's a vote, and eventually those products will go away.
Well, in 2018, the FDA actually banned the hydrogenated and partially hydrogenated fats because they found that they are so bad for you. And so manufacturers, I mean, they can still, I think if they were made before then, they can, there are products that were made and they're still allowing them to be used. So it's still out there. And also if it's like in a tiny amount, I think they said if it was like 0.4, 0.5 grams per serving, then they don't have to claim it on the label. So it's still out there. It's still in our foods, again, because it makes them more shelf stable, but they're not always having to put it down
Well, Europe's
as
ahead of
an
the game,
ingredient.
right? Now I think more socialized a lot of times when the government pays for the health care, I mean, it's completely banned over there. And so, so obviously we know it's not.
So I think the bottom line is read labels and then avoid processed foods like we always talk about.
If
just
it's in
because
a package,
if it's
unless it's a ding dong and it's your treat for the day. No.
Yeah, and it is looking at, you can still, obviously, we're not purists, so occasionally we'll get some packaged crackers or we'll get some packaged things, but we're pretty picky about the choices we're going to make, and we would pick. So if you're going to pick something, read labels, because it'll put down there either hydrogenated, partially hydrogenated, or trans fats.
So before we move on, I know, because we're working off some notes here, the role of fats, but your topic, Amy, says fat rolls.
I think
Was that?
well, sometimes we get fat rolls too. Yeah, I might
you're
have
fine.
written that wrong. So let's move on to good fats. This also is quite a confusing topic. So like I said, I used to say the good, the bad, and the ugly. We used to think saturated fats were all bad. Saturated fats are fats that come from mostly animal products, meat, cheese, things like that.
So I always think of it, because you told me this, is at room temperature if it's solid.
Yes, saturated.
That's a saturated
yes.
fat.
Yeah, that's good.
So the white stuff in my bacon would be a saturated fat. Right?
But it's interesting. So that is true. Solids. Some
fat.
other saturated fats are pork fat. Yes. And so, those fats you want to minimize, right? But
Right.
butter and ghee, coconut oil, those are saturated fats. So that's where this gets a little confusing, because there are some, like we talk about the grass-fed meat and animals, and then the eggs from the chickens that are grass-fed. Those have more favorable saturated fats. They're the good, the omega-3s. So fats, there's omega-3, 6, and 9. And those are actually unsaturated. But then the saturated fats also, there's different types of saturated fats. And so if we pick more of the grass-fed meats, and then even organic or grass-fed butter, ghee, and then coconut oil is a saturated fat, but it has a lot of positive effects in our body. They're less likely to promote heart disease. Those type of saturated fats, actually, the reason saturated fat got such a bad rap is it raises cholesterol. But what we've shown is the type of LDL, which is the bad cholesterol that saturated fats increase, are the better type of LDL. It's less sticky, it's like bigger, fluffier, and so it helps you make the good cholesterol. And then these good saturated fats also raise your good cholesterol, the HDL. So big picture again is coconut oil is good and okay, and in moderation. Remember, Dr. Hyman always talks about it being a condiment, grass-fed meat, or a little bit of dairy. If you don't have any sensitivity, just try to pick the better sources of those saturated fats.
And you say this all the time, which is, think about when we're eating animal protein or consuming anything from an animal, they're doing the work for us of maybe going out and eating the phytonutrients in the grasses or whatever, right? And then they are making their meat that we end up consuming, and the enzymes and all the protein and all this healthy fat stuff. So that's why you're always like grass-fed.
Well, you are what your animal eats, right?
So they're taking it and condensing
Right,
it down
right.
into something that now it's almost like a supplement. You're condensing it down into a small, concentrated pill that maybe we take. It's not
Fuel,
dissimilar
energy.
to that, kind of.
Yeah, so it is just thinking about where that comes from. You're right.
Yeah.
And then the unsaturated fats, these are really the good fats, the best fats. And so most of those are from plant-based things such as nuts and seeds, but also fish. And this is where we get into the omega-3, 6, and 9. Omega-3 is the best. And then people hear these essential fatty acids. So there are essential fatty acids. It means it's essential that we get them in through our food and our diet because our body can't make them.
EFAs.
And they're essential for good, proper functioning of our body and our cells. And so there's the alpha linoleic acid, ALA, and then there's EPA and DHA. We hear a lot of times when you look on your fish oil supplement, it might say EPA and DHA. The EPA is more the anti-inflammatory type property. It's really mainly in fish, like salmon, herring, sardines. The DHA is in fish, but it's also in algae. So some people that are vegetarian will get some red algae or red-brown algae that'll have that DHA. Again, 60% of our brain is fat, and then over half of that I think is made up is the DHA. So the DHA is the really good part for our brain. So again, it's all about balance and getting this variety in.
These deficiencies in the EFAs
the essential fatty acids.
Associated with eczema and some skin disorders. And,
yeah, you know how people get the dry skin or those bumps
Right.
on their arm? That is a really common symptom that or sign that you're low in your essential fatty acids. You can measure, you can do blood tests that measure your good fats and your actually your good fat and your bad fat profiles, and we do those a lot on our patients. Helps you figure out what you need more and less of in your diet. They also decrease your risk for heart disease because they lower blood pressure, lower cholesterol, like we talked about, bring out the good cholesterol, lower the bad cholesterol. They can even lower risk of things like AFib and arrhythmias. So they're very important just to get. And so again, back to flax is probably the most nutritious way to get the alpha-linoleic acid, and then seeds, nuts.
We seem to get those more in our breakfasts, as I've noticed. If it's putting it on a yogurt, which I can't have anymore. But the hemp and the...
You could do,
I'll do the
coconut or silk or almond yogurt, and you can do that.
But
I put it in my
hemp,
smoothie this morning.
Or some of the ones I know.
And seeds,
chia
like
seeds, I think, were
chia
another one.
seeds, even sesame seeds, sunflower seeds, pumpkin seeds, they're good sources of these good fats. Interestingly too, soybean oil and canola oil are also of where you can get some of these essential fatty acids, but they're not good fats for you. These vegetable oils used to get marketed as being such a good fat for us, like they were the best way to get unsaturated fats. Really, the problem is they also have a lot of other problems. They increase inflammation, and they have negative effects on our arteries and our cholesterol and things. And so it's really hard to find packaged foods. If you look at salad dressings, if you look at a lot of sauces and things that are made over the counter, they have soybean oil in them, or canola or corn oil.
And this is where it comes down to us voting again.
Good for
because
us.
let's just be honest, we're in Indiana here, and we know we have plenty of corn and plenty of soybeans all over the place.
Yeah. And if you want to use an oil, if you want to use an oil, you should really, if you're talking about cooking, low heat, you're going to use olive oil. And then higher heat, you can use coconut oil, grapeseed oil, avocado oil you can use for both.
What can't you use coconut oil for?
I know. It's good for your skin.
It's everything.
It's good
It's funny.
I know. It is really good. So what else? The omega-3s, there's been studies shown that those with highest levels in their blood had lower risk of heart attacks.
Postpartum depression.
Back to the dopamine, which is critical for brain function, especially in kids. The omega-3s help boost your dopamine when they looked at kids that had more essential fatty acids in their diet.
And you're finding them in the avocados, olive, flax, nuts, and
seeds, fish, grass-fed beef. I mean, omega-3s are in all of these. Eggs, seaweed, algae, tofu, soybeans, butters, nut butters. So if you can just really look at it, remember that plate, a fourth of your plate should be these healthy fats. Every meal we should try to include fats. Something we haven't talked about either is there are fat-soluble vitamins. So A, D, E, and K, you have to have fat to really get optimal absorption. So if you're going to eat a salad dry or raw veggies, you don't get nearly the amount of absorption of those good fat-soluble vitamins as you would if you add some oil to it. So think of that too. Olive oil, or there's some avocado or some olives in with your veggies, and you get a much better absorption of all of those.
So your sixes, you're getting into the fats like the vegetable oils?
Yeah, so that's again why we don't really want to overdo. So there's a proper ratio we're supposed to have between omega-3s, 6, and really 9's the bad ones. But in America, we have a lot higher ratio of omega-6 versus 3 in our diet, and it's supposed to really be 2 to 1, like more omega-3s than 6's. So a little bit of omega-6 is okay, but we way overdo it. Soybean oil, safflower, sunflower, canola oil, too much, they have those omega-6s. And so they just, basically they kind of negate some of the positive effects we get from the omega-3s, and they create more inflammation and more problems for our body. So,
What's your best cooking oils? The olive,
Um,
avocado, coconut, and the grapeseed. Those are the ones we have up in our cabinet. But if we were to go through our day, I mean, I'm just trying to think for breakfast. Usually I have mixed nuts or seeds. Any of those we mentioned earlier, the flax, hemp, or the chia. We usually have a package of those. And you've always said milled or ground is obviously preferred so that your body doesn't have to break
the
it
flax,
down.
yeah, you get more of those oils and
Sometimes
fibers.
I know you have the avocado. What else do you have for breakfast?
Sometimes eggs, they have good fats in them.
That's true. You can get the omega-3 eggs that have that
Grass fed,
already part of it.
They feed the animals like
With
more
that.
omega grass. I add into my smoothie, like I said, the flax, or sometimes I'll put some coconut oil in my smoothie. It just depends.
We've done it for breakfast in our coffee.
Yes,
right?
MCT oil, coconut
MCT
oil.
oils and stuff. I think lunch for me would be if I'm doing oil and vinegar on my salad. I can get my olive oil there. Olives,
I've been
of
throwing
course.
olives in.
We've been doing more
Hummus,
olives.
we do a lot. Hummus has the protein and the good oils and the good fats. Avocado again, or guac.
In a dinner, I mean, we're always cooking with usually our olive oil or even the grapeseed oil when we're doing our vegetables. A lot of the grass, if we're having meats, it's usually always grass-fed. So if today's Tuesday, which anyway, I know it comes out on Friday, then we have
Do a
our
Taco Tuesday.
Taco Tuesday
We have
with
a lot.
the
We have
grass-fed
guac,
meat
grass-fed.
from Aldi.
We saute our
And
veggies
organic.
in coconut oil.
Yep.
Coconut oil is great for high heat, and it's got such good flavor.
I usually get one handful of mixed nuts outside of my breakfast nuts.
Yeah, I would say we should all probably try to get like a quarter cup of nuts or seeds a day. That's a really good way to get your good fats in.
And then the olives with a martini? No, we don't do that very often. But
Tofu,
occasionally.
roasted soybeans, those type of things are other good ways that just thinking about how we get our good fats through the day.
That's awesome.
And I think the variety, just nut butters are a good thing too. If you're going to have like some fruit, or you could do celery and nut butters, they're really good. But just the variety, because they all have different types of the good fats and different ratios. And so, it's better to not always every single day make almonds your only nuts. Walnuts have different things than pumpkin seeds, than soybeans and soy nuts. So it's really good to get a variety in, and yeah.
That's good. Well, thanks for sharing. I mean, this is a great topic, and I think to your point, a lot of times misunderstood. So definitely we would love for you to share this with someone. I mean, if it's YouTube, subscribe to it. If it's a podcast, follow us. Get your buddies, send it out to them. We are here to serve you, so check us out, OPT2LIV.com. We are grateful for the opportunity to serve each and every one of you. We are wishing you a wonderful day. Take care.